Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Divorce Couch. My name is Salma, and I'm a divorce coach based in London.
Hi, my name is Simone, and I'm a divorce coach based in Germany.
And hi, my name is Claire, and I'm a divorce coach based in the north of Ireland.
So today we thought we'd discuss a topic which I think everybody that embarks on this journey of divorce goes through. And that is very much about how the relationship between the two partners changes. And that can be something, that, a lot of clients can struggle with, because you go from being, one unit, whether that was a healthy unit or, if you're filing for divorce, it's very likely that it was an unhealthy unit in some shape or form. But learning to communicate with your partner and learning to set the correct boundaries can be really difficult at this stage. And we thought that would be a great topic to cover. So who would like to start with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here.
Go ahead.
I think the first thing that I think we need to always recognize is that everybody's divorce journey is different. Some people are the person who drives the divorce for whatever the reason happens to be. And so that person is always going to be further ahead than the other person. Sometimes somebody is the left person and their set of emotions is different. So there's an awareness to be had around what are the circumstances, because that impacts the emotional response, which then triggers things like anger and upset and resentment and depression and all sorts of things. So part of the dynamics at the beginning of a divorce journey are to do with how did the divorce journey start? If there was a natural breakdown in a marriage, do both parties recognize that? Or is it that only one party sees it and wants something different because what they have isn't working? So dynamics of how you start a divorce journey are a little bit complex. And I think there are different ways to look at that allow you to understand how the next part, which is the divorce part, unfolds, because it is like throwing up a volcano in the middle of your house, and it impacts everybody in your world, your families, your friends, your in-laws, your outlaws, everybody that you know is going to be touched in some way. And out of that comes what we hear when we talk to our friends and family, how they're reacting and responding to it. And that in turn has an implication very often in how we interact with our spouse. So when I look at my story, I think there was a communication breakdown between the two of us. When the divorce journey started, because I was the one who started our divorce journey, I was further along that road. And I did try in as much as I could to understand that, to allow, what's the word I would use? Understanding in reaction processing time. Because actually there was a lot of time needed to process a lot of emotions. What that did in my situation was it just made communication break down every which way. I made assumptions, he made assumptions. We didn't really know how to communicate. Both of us had an underlying fear of what would the other person do. And then there was 2 children in the middle of this. So when you have an underlying fear and possible mistrust and everything, that definitely impacts communication. So that's the during process. Then you come out the other side, the finances are sorted, the divorce is done. So the fear of how will this work? What will he do? What will I do? Is definitely dialed down. But then to start and change a pattern doesn't just happen just because you have signed pieces of paper. So you get your piece of paper and you think, well, that's one thing. But when there are young children involved, then how are you going to co-parent, parallel parent? What is the difference in the two? What is the relationship like between you? And I would say that it took a while for us to be able to communicate in a way that we didn't create any unnecessary upset. I would have been very conscious of wording things, and I think that what it did for me was it heightened up my use of energy, it heightened up my overthinking on what will he say, what will he think. Now I would say, we're 6 years through from when our journey started. Now the children move between the two of us with flexibility. And that is a wonderful place to be at. But it has taken a lot of work to get to this point. And I think my expectations at the beginning when the divorce was done were quite different, actually. And depending on the age of your children, if you have children, will depend very often on how much interaction you have with each other as humans. So if you have to interact more because children are smaller, there's less time to balance out, to process, because time and space most definitely have a very positive role to play within this journey. So that's a bit of my story and my understanding of it.
Well, mine is different, as you know. I have no more contact, unfortunately. There's not much I can say. Let's just say for this episode, it's the status quo. Their communication has broken down. And especially when children are involved, things need to be communicated. And I can only say that as a coach, we now then have to look, as much as we maybe want to have in a communication style with the other person, if it is not there, let's just leave it at that, then what else can we do? Then there must be different ways to then have still the attachment, because court and children will both require the relationship with the other parent, right? So there is something happening on the partner level that has completely irretrievably broken down, and sometimes you cannot fix it. And yet you're still connected. And I think that's a very bizarre setup. So what I'm saying is, but because the father of my children doesn't live in Germany, it doesn't apply here. But there are instruments that you can look into. For example, you mentioned the word parallel parenting. It's when parents do not communicate, yet the children are going back and forth. And then there is, for example, there is an app. And you can use the app. So if you do not want to speak face-to-face, you can use the app, in which you will then schedule appointments. It goes from dentist appointment, medical appointments, school appointments. Kid has, I don't know, like school performances, what is needed when they go back and forth. And you basically have something in between these two parents to help to ease the communication that has broken down, but still needs to be there. That's really bizarre, right? There is no communication, but they need to communicate because the children are going back and forth. So I have had a client, and she says it's wonderful to have this. And even if you communicate, and sometimes if the communication does not go well, clearly I don't have to tell you, if the communication is broken down, it is not a very easy breakup scenario, right? Because you know what, if you can't talk to one another, what does it tell about the potential outcome? And that app then helps you to email back and forth. And if something has completely gone wrong, at least it's in the app, right? You know what, then there can't be, you know what, deletion is it? Oh, no, you've never said that. Sometimes it is about he said, she said. Unfortunately, we have to face it. Sometimes it's not very easy. Then that app helps you, right? It's just basically a tool for both sides. I say, you know what, this is how we bring information back and forth. And you know what, if things comes to worse and we go back to court because we are fighting over children, then this is a tool that can be used.
Yeah, and communication, you know, hearing what you're saying, Simone, that can happen for a few reasons. One reason can be that one parent feels that it's not safe for them to keep having communication because of the dynamics of the relationship. Other times it's because the other parent is choosing not to communicate. So sometimes, you know, the reason why communication breaks down irretrievably can be different causes, but yet you still have to parent and you still have to move forward. And how do you navigate that? And that's the very real unknown that I think comes out of divorce journeys, because we don't know when you start. Nobody knows how it's going to pan out as you go. It is a very complex and unpredictable process. Yeah. And for wanting it and for the best will in the world, wanting it to be, you know, that we're going to be friends and we're going to do this, that is not always the outcome. And being able to hold on to the outcome that you have and be as okay as you can be with it is part of the journey, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, I think what's really important here is recognizing that you now need, you do need to sort of recreate your boundaries with this person who is no longer, has that place in your life that they may have had prior, to the divorce. And I think, like, from my perspective, that was one of the hardest things to do, because I had fallen into patterns of being incredibly passive. I know most people listening to me probably don't see me like that, but at that point I was incredibly passive, did not know how to fight my corner. My ex-husband's way of communicating was incredibly aggressive and demanding, and I was very much in a place where I was too scared to stand up for myself. And that pattern just sort of continued even after we were divorced, because I didn't redefine my boundaries. I didn't say, well, actually, we're not married anymore. So whatever the reasons were that I allowed myself to accept that behavior when we were married, that's a topic for a different video. But actually what I needed to do was redefine my boundaries and to protect myself and my children. Because, what we don't want to do is, I was escaping a huge amount of conflict within the family, but actually what happened in, especially maybe the first month of the first year after our divorce, was all that happened is we were just not living in the same house, but the conflict around the children that I was trying to protect them from and what I was trying to protect myself from was still very much there, because I was still allowing these behaviors to be a very much part of my life. And only we as individuals can identify what new boundaries we need. And that is so important. And, for me, when I talk about redefining that relationship, is really about how do you learn to communicate, if you can. I mean, in an ideal situation, two people, they have children. Yes, they can on some level be friends and, continue and, bring up the children together and share decisions and yes, that's what we would all aspire to. That's not always possible. And like Simone said, sometimes you have to revert to other forms of communication in order to make things work. And, in my situation, I think I did hold this idea that, well, do you know what? We just need to be friends, right? But in reality, that was not going to be possible, because for the parties to remain friends, both parties have to be committed to that in some shape or form. We both had to go on a journey of self-development, accepting what had happened, move away from the resentment, look at, potentially forgiveness for the hurt that we had caused each other. But that didn't happen. So all that was happening was actually I was getting caught up in the same conflict that I had been in when I was in the marriage. Yeah. And for me, it was really about redefining that relationship to say, okay, we are not friends. We are not husband and wife. We are mum and dad. And Absolutely. That's all we are. Yeah. And, yes, it's not ideal. But I think that what has helped my children is to really know exactly what that definition is.
Yeah. I think that even though someone has come to a point where they find it difficult, I think it's important, again, I never want to point a finger, but if somebody wants to or finds it difficult to continue talking, I think what I really want to stress is that doesn't mean that you have to stop talking too. There are still things that need to be said. There is still something that needs to be organized. It could be summer holidays, and you still need to bring something across. And if on an emotional level, this might still cause pain and hurt, there is a way forward. I am a huge fan of Bill Eddy, and Bill Eddy has, apart from this parenting app that today is basically a lot more practical. There is something else that Bill Eddy is teaching. And I would like to bring this into our video today, which is called Biff. So basically, Biff is a response which is brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And very often whether we are going through divorce or we are done and things are still not as civil, as amicable, as mutual as you experience currently, Claire, then we need some assistance on the outside. And then maybe if all our viewers know that if we can't speak on a more friendly level with one another, then let's look at something how we can communicate, which takes away any emotions. And this is Biff. So basically, it's about a very brief information. It should be informative. You know what? Take out all attributes, adverbs, right? Again, you have done it again, or don't talk down. I have an advice. It's just basically next week, our child has a concert at school. It's from then to then. You are invited. Done. Yeah. It's brief, and then you just basically thank you and you sign off. And it still should be friendly. It's still something. You know what? Sometimes even if we are at the workplace, for example, we might have a colleague. Or if we are outside or we are at a party, sometimes we do come across people that are not 100% like us, and we kind of feel distant and irritated. And yet, you know what, outside our marriage, we are very capable of still holding a conversation. And this is this Biff, right? You know what, you still have on a very civil level the ability to communicate. And I love this. So let's put this at the end, put out there. Yeah. Biff. So it's for all of you to see there is a way. If you don't know how to communicate, then go by Biff. And if you are still not unsure, reread it, have a friend read it.
Yes.
And the most beautiful thing here is sometimes if you are in an acrimonious split, even the lawyers need to do this. Lawyers have sometimes a very, very aggressive way of putting the other person with the back to their wall. And if somebody is already about winning and losing, they are just so triggered by the way the lawyers formulate their, or how do you call it? Use the word.
Their language.
Their language. Yeah. And you know what? And sometimes you have to go in and say, you know what, this is not working, or this keeps escalating the conflict. Can we please retreat to what's really necessary? What do we really want to bring across?
Yes.
Yeah. And also the dynamics of a relationship sometimes need to be redefined, because I was the kind of person who had this need to explain myself. And so if I wanted to ask my ex about something, I would have all of this stuff in just to soften it, but actually what helped me is, but I hadn't heard of Biff at that time. What I did was I tried to change it from my normal texting to a business reply. And I thought, well, at work, I use business language. So I can do that. And what I did was I kind of imagined my ex to be a business person. And how would I communicate with a business person? You don't make it over friendly. You don't give reasons. You don't give excuses. It allowed me to narrow it down. And even reframing that, I found quite difficult, I have to say. And I mean, I don't like conflict particularly. So my nature was to try and be the peacemaker, to try and avoid. But in so doing, I found I was draining my energy all the time.
Yeah.
And actually, those are the things that as divorce coaches, we can help our clients to see, to understand, and to be able to move forward in a different way, to make it that they can see what's happening with their solicitor's letter, as you so rightly said, Simone, and go to their solicitor and say, actually, this isn't helping. Yeah. And we sort of feel sometimes like we shouldn't be doing that to the solicitor. They know their job, but actually they're working on your behalf.
Yes.
So it is okay to have a say.
And they know their job, but they don't know the personality of your partner, and you do. So there's nothing wrong with, like voicing your concerns. And I think one of the other things that I was going to mention, which has slipped my mind now, showing my age now, was about it just comes to mind with a client that I worked with recently, was to actually recognize the patterns of behavior. And, I know, we talk about, a lot about like the games that we end up playing when we're in relationships.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we are getting dragged into things that actually, if we just step back and put our ego aside just for a moment and decided, I'm not going to engage in that anymore. I've seen this pattern before. I know what the outcome is. Is there any point or any objective in engaging in a WhatsApp argument about something? Is there value in that? Because like you said, Claire, a lot of these conversations, if we keep them brief and informative and friendly, we can conserve our energy into something a bit more positive. But when we get dragged into the same old games that we were playing when we were part of that marriage, then nothing's changing. And that's what's really important, is to recognize not only your own patterns of behavior, but to recognize the patterns of behavior of the person that you're no longer married to, and to try and avoid falling back into those patterns.
But there's something that just reminded me of a conversation with my client, and I don't even know whether I have done the same thing. For whatever reason, we think, I just think this is quite common. You split up and you think, no, things have changed. As if, all of a sudden the patterns of the past are done because, what we are done as a couple. And then all of a sudden people just think, I don't understand. Why is it still continuing? Because we're still the same people. Just, what the setup is different. And then you kind of think, oh, but now it's done, right? There's no more fighting. And then we bring the same communication style, the same issues that clearly led to the breakup. And it now only manifests itself because now you're retreating. And very often, and this is to bring back the solicitor, let's not forget, I heard this. I think I did an internship in a law firm, and it originally comes from criminal court. And criminal court is about having a winner and a loser. And for whatever reason, I think many people going into divorce, it's still about having a winner and a loser, and it's a wrong mindset. It's the wrong attitude. There is no winning and there is no losing. And I think that what happened very quickly in this communication, that we still feel we need to defend ourselves. I need to speak up. I now need to find my boundaries. No, now this is really just about, having content or having an issue that needs to be solved. And let's not forget the people that are watching or that come to us. Those are not the ones who have already figured that one out, how to win-win, right? How to go and just basically move on, because they have just very peacefully agreed that our marriage is not working anymore, but we can still be somehow connected, that we move forward. It's those people that have Christmases together, and go on holidays together. That happens. But I guess, our viewers and the clients that I work with, it's exactly how it doesn't happen with, right? And then, just to explain to them is you are still in the same patterns that you were within your marriage. Let's not forget that. Should never be a surprise, but we keep thinking we go in and say, no, it's over. No, it's not. It is still the same personality you are handling now, or you're dealing with.
Yeah, just with a different name, I suppose. So I think that's probably a great point that you made, Simone, to wrap up on, is that, ultimately there are no winners or losers in this. And it's really, really important to find a way of keeping those communication channels open, but in a way that you are able to move forward. And, sometimes it means that, we can't have face-to-face conversations, but there are lots of apps nowadays. And what we can do is post some in the description of apps that you could explore. There's email, there's text messages, there's lots of different avenues open to us, especially for those of us that have to maintain some level of contact when we have, children of different ages. But I think what is really important is the Biff model that you described, Simone, is in order to protect ourselves, this isn't about winning a conversation. This is about like giving information in the briefest, most informative way, try to take the emotion out of it. There is no, sort of massive value to be had from extended conflict. And I think, to realize that actually, yes, you are divorced now, you're no longer married, and there will be an adjustment period where you need to redefine what that relationship looks like. How are you going to communicate going forward? How are you going to treat each other with a certain level of respect and, be civil with each other? And that's what we want to work towards. So thank you for joining us on the couch. We look forward to seeing you again. And if you enjoyed this video, please do like and share, and spread the word to friends and colleagues that may benefit from the advice that we've given. And if there's anything that you would like us to talk about in the future, please do drop us a comment, and we'll be happy to prepare a conversation around that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.